everyone. Can you hear me?
Morning.
Morning. Thank you for having us at the African American Lodge this morning. Appreciate the opportunity and everyone for waking up early and getting out on a beautiful Saturday to be here and hear from us. So I'd like to share with everyone a little bit about myself and some of my background in the next 2 minutes. I'm lifelong Hamden resident, proud Hamden High School graduate. My family's been in town for several generations, and my wife and I recently had our first son, Walter Morton V. So very excited about that. So this race has taken on a bit of a different meaning for me from 2 years ago when I ran. Having a perspective now of being the head of a household, a family man, a husband, and a father. In my years past, I was on the Board of Education for about 8 years, served as the finance chair, also had the privilege of working for the town of Hamden as the director of legislative affairs, where I went to Hartford in DC and worked with our delegations on bringing back legislative outcomes, solutions, bonding for the town of Hamden. Part of the reason why I ran was to provide some perspective and a long-term strategic plan for the town of Hamden. So with that little bit, I'll leave you. I know I'm running out of time, and we'll take my 8 minutes to get into further details on that strategic plan and what I'd like to get into, but that's just a bit of an intro about me and why I'm here. Thank you. Thank you. It's perfect. Good morning again. So happy to be back and take my 8 minutes to get into a little more detail about my platform and what I'd be looking to offer as mayor. A little background, I have 2 unique experiences in life that have helped shape the campaign that I'm running, the mayoral candidate that I aspire to be. It would be my time in service on the Board of Education and also my 14 years of service in the United States military, the Army, to be specifically, and I'm still a member of the Connecticut National Guard at the moment. But in both capacities, a lot of the work that I did dealt with long-term planning. On the Board of Ed, a good bulk of my final 4 or 5 years was putting together a long-term strategic plan for the Board of Education that dealt with things such as declining enrollment, how to racially balance our schools, a structural deficit, and then also providing much-needed capital upgrades. Same thing in the United States military, as a lot of folks might imagine. I know there's some folks in the audience and one individual on stage who's also served. We plan obsessively. We come up with a primary plan, a secondary, and even a tertiary. And one thing that I've noticed that started to frustrate me in my time, both working for the town, but also being on the Board of Education, is I realized that the town of Hamden as a whole does not have a long-term strategic plan. A lot of municipalities across Connecticut, you can look around, you can go on their websites, and they have a 5-year, a 10-year plan.
Yes.
And what does that plan contain? It talks about everything from goals to economic development, to education, to staffing of different departments, to different arts and culture ideas, even things like local marketing campaigns for the municipality. And while everybody in Hamden can agree the taxes are too damn high and we have a lot of debt to pay, nobody's really in lockstep about the direction we're going to take day over day, month over month, year over year to get there. And newsflash, if no one's told you, we didn't get into this financial mess overnight. It was decades of mismanagement and poor decisions, and also some things outside of our control, like every municipality. But if we're being honest with ourselves, and I'm proud to say that when I ran 2 years ago and when I'm running this year, I've been honest with folks, I'm not going to be able to fix this situation in one budget year. Nobody can. It's beyond any one person. It's beyond any one budget. However, what I think will be most helpful in this town going forward, and especially with the mayor who's going to have the first 4-year term in town history, is someone who's willing to come in and work with the Board of Ed, the Legislative Council, all our boards and commissions, our residents in the town, and say, where do we want Hamden to be in 10 years? Because I do believe that our situation is manageable and something that we can get out of and grow our way out of in 10 years. But it's going to take time, it's going to take some organization, and it's also going to take some prioritization of things. When everything's a priority, nothing is a priority. And so what I propose to do as mayor, and what I would like to do, is to be the first mayor that comes in and lays out that strategic plan and have goals for economic development, which is so huge. One way to help alleviate the burden on residents in Hamden and lifelong residents when it comes to taxes is to grow our grand list, new businesses, new housing, right? I believe Hamden has some awesome areas that are ripe for redevelopment and even new developments. I think we're focusing on our economic corridors, State Street, Whitney Avenue, and Dixwell. We can then start to figure out how we want to grow this town and where the opportunity to grow is. The single biggest thing we can do for economic development in that portion of the strategic plan is changing our planning and zoning regulations. Our P&Z regs essentially are the blueprint for how the town is developed, to how many stories you can have on your house, to how many stories can be in a commercial building, even things like how many parking spaces are required. We're long overdue as a town for updating and modernizing those planning and zoning regulations, because one thing that I've heard consistently from both businesses and residents is the challenges they have going before P&Z and trying to make changes either to their home or to their business. Those things add up. It takes more time, it costs them more money, and it frustrates a lot of people. But we have to embrace growth. The simple fact of the matter is our town government and our budget has kind of outgrown our grandness, so we need to increase that base. Another area that I think is super, super important to the town and our future, but personally important to me as a graduate of our public schools and as someone who looks forward to sending my son to Hamden Public Schools, is our education system. My 8 years on the Board of Education ultimately ended up in a lot of cuts to staff and programming before and after school programs because of the town's fiscal situation. We can't spend money that we don't have, right? So we unfortunately had to cut back offerings and opportunities there. But I think if we're looking to grow this town, both from a business perspective and from a perspective of how many residents live here, the school district is one of the biggest selling points of any local community. So some folks will tell you that maybe we spend too much on education. I don't think we invest enough. And I know what the long-term down the road effects of investing in our students and the future generations of this town, how it will attract businesses, how it will attract people to live here. Is what kept my parents here, for example, when they raised me and my two siblings. They love the school systems and what it offers. So we have to get back to that. But that's a conversation to have with the Board of Education and the administration there to say, what do you need over the next 10 years? What would you like your school district to be? We can be aspirational in that conversation, but then also talk about the things that absolutely need to get done. In addition to that, that strategic plan, I think, should also include an opportunity for the town of Hamden to engage in a marketing campaign. I look at some other municipalities in the state of Connecticut, Stamford, New Britain, Hartford. You turn the radio on, you turn the television on, you see commercials or hear commercial spots where they're inviting people to come to their communities, come visit our restaurants, come shop at our stores, come vacation here, even come live here. One thing we need to do is to sell this town, to market this town to everyone, both for residents, to businesses, and even folks who want to visit. I really believe that the town of Hamden is located geographically in a little area I like to call the Quinnipiac corridor in Connecticut that's so ripe for opportunity. We have rail that runs through the State Street side of Hamden. We're just outside of New Haven. We've got Quinnipiac in the north, and I think there's a big opportunity to leverage some better relationships and town-gown opportunities with QU. I also think it's a pretty big missed opportunity that we have a lot of young talent and intellectual capital at Quinnipiac getting educated, getting degrees. What are we doing to retain those folks and get them working either as town employees or opening businesses in Hamden or finding jobs, right? So when we talk about growth, I think that's an aspect of it as well. But I just really believe that the biggest thing we need to do as a town is to figure out where we want to be in 10 years and then work back from there and have that conversation and come up with steps and things we can do day over day, week over week, month over month as we go to council meetings and go to board meetings and we're voting. We at least are all on the same page and know ultimately where we want to get to. Because I think there's been a lot of great people who have sought this office, have been on council, have been on the Board of Ed, but you have a bunch of individuals who show up and just try to do things as individuals in that capacity. What we really need to do is to come together as a town, to think long-term and collectively establish what some goals and priorities are, and then work on it over that 5 to 10 year period. And so that's what I would propose to do as the next mayor of Hamden, and I thank you for your time.